Creating wireframes is an important but also what can be quite lengthy phase in the overall UX and web design process. It's a place where you can explore your ideas and have creative freedom to then refine and validate those ideas all before beginning your UI designs. You don't want to go too deep into defining your colors, fonts, and other styling choices before you've locked in the foundations of your overall user experience. And that's what wireframes are there for, to help you throughout the design process. Now, for wireframes, there are actually two types which you should know about, so you can make sure that your web design and UX projects go as smooth as butter. So let's talk about that. G'day everyone, it's me Drew, and today we're going to talk about the two types of wireframes that you should know about, where they fit in the process, and when to use them. But for those smart cookies out there that think they know what I'm going to say, why don't you leave a comment down below with your guesses, and then let me know if you're right, or if you learned something new. So first, let's start with Low-Fi Wireframes. Now these come first in the overall process and are called Low-Fi as in low fidelity. These types of wireframes are often quite exploratory and quite creative, and they can just really be rough sketches. They don't have to be anything special. So you can either do this digitally on something like FigJam with an Apple Pencil, or even just rough sketches on a scrap piece of paper or even like a napkin or something like that. Now for these types of wireframes, no idea is necessarily a bad idea, and it's a place where you can just explore all your designs across the different mediums required for your project. So for example, desktop, tablet and mobile, because you can't really forget about responsiveness in this day and age. And since these types of wireframes are quite exploratory and come first in the overall design process, they're really just for either yourself or the team that you're working with. So if there's one or two spelling mistakes, if it is quite a bit messy, I wouldn't stress too much. As long as you can go back to it and understand what you're trying to convey, it shouldn't be a problem. Now when I'm creating Low-Fi wireframes for the projects which I'm working on, while I do understand the scope of the project, so I can understand the goals and objectives in terms of what I needed to design, in terms of the technical limitations, I don't tend to take that into consideration too much, as it is that exploratory phase of the project, and tend just to go with the creative flow. Once I get all those ideas out, I then go back and then refine and then talk to any relevant stakeholders to understand what's possible and what's not possible from what I've kind of just jotted down. Now that we've covered the gist of Low-Fi wireframes, we can move on to the second type, which are High-Fi wireframes. And as you can probably guess, High-Fi means high fidelity. And for me, I refer to this as something that's a bit more presentable and a bit more polished. Now these High-Fi wireframes are usually based off the Low-Fi sketches which I had done previously, and they're presentable in the way that I could share them with other teams and departments, possibly stakeholders and clients, and even users for user testing. Now don't be fooled, this doesn't mean that High-Fi wireframes have to be digital. They can also be analog, it just depends all on the context and the scenario and purpose of which you need them for. Now, for example, let's start with presenting your wireframes to a client for approval before moving on to the UI designs. This I would most likely recommend doing digitally. That way you can always present your screen on a Zoom call, you can always send them a link after the meeting, and then they can always leave comments for feedback afterwards. And that way you got it all consolidated in one place, and it's just much easier to manage. However, for something like user testing, I would most likely recommend to use analog wireframes on just pieces of paper. That way, while they're clicking through the interface, you can easily just pull in and out components, or even if you have any ideas on the fly, you can just sketch them on a piece of paper and validate those as you're going through it. Now, digital is probably going to be the way to go for most scenarios, but again, there's always that purpose for analog, so just think about how you want to use them and which one may be best for your scenario. Look, there's a time and a place for each type of wireframe, and throughout anything in the design process, it's never linear. So if you move to high fidelity wireframes and something doesn't feel quite right, you can always go back to Low-Fi, scribble out a couple more ideas until you get somewhere more comfortable, and then move to the High-Fi again to go and validate those, and then again present them off if you need to present them to any clients or stakeholders for any approvals or anything like that. Another way of which I both use analog and digital for my wireframes is that I start my Low-Fi wireframes actually on whiteboards, so that way I can just easily rub things out. Once I'm happy to a certain point, I then take a photo on my phone just in case someone rubs out the whiteboard or in case I've got to do more screens or other mock-ups. So then I can go back to that photo, make it all nice and neat on FigJam, so then I can present it back to a client and then continue with the process of doing the high fidelity UI designs and Figma and prototyping and all that jazz. But that's the important things which you need to know for both Low-Fi and High-Fi wireframes. If you do have any more questions, don't hesitate to leave that in the comments down below. And if you did enjoy the video, a like would always be much appreciated for the algorithms and everything like that. If you don't have any questions, or if you didn't guess anything at the start of the video, you can always leave me a nice smiley face in the comments. That would always be great. But thank you very much for watching. It's me, Drew, and I'll see you next time.